You know who was German around that time? Albert Einstein. That's right. That's right. You know who else was? Karl Marx. And that shuts them up. That shuts up the liberals quite a bit, or the lefties, all the radical left. They'll stop talking when they hear those two little nuggets. That's what I like to call them, nuggets. Yeah, just throw those nuggets at your lefty friends. In a recent Zoom call, Aaron O'Toole shared tips with campus conservatives on how to win a debate with liberals about residential schools. He suggested the architects of the schools only meant to provide education to Indigenous children. Interesting. Tell me more. Or show me more.
Most of the lefty radicals are also the dumbest people at your university.
Oh, I love this already. Oh, this is a great start. Okay, so everybody, if you're unaware, this is the current leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He's the one who would be up against Justin Trudeau and or Jagmeet Singh in the upcoming election. And this is a secret Zoom call that got released where he's basically going to try and find a good way to teach children about residential schools. If you're unaware of what the residential school program was in Canada, it's pretty much like the Canadian Holocaust. It was a system in which we would take children from their mother's arms if they were Indigenous in the country and put them into re-education schools where they were systematically tortured, raped, abused, and taught to erase their cultural history, their languages, their actual names. Their names got replaced from Indigenous names to Christian names. At times, they would even give them numbers. They would have to learn all of their history, their heritage, their language, and effectively be reintroduced into society as good old white Christian members of the Canadian, project, shall we say. So the idea of trying to change or transform how we teach kids about the residential school system is abhorrent, to say the very least. It's very similar to someone saying, how do we teach kids about the good aspects of the Holocaust? I mean, can we teach kids the positive things that Pol Pot did? I mean, it wasn't all just torture and smashing babies along the side of trees and things like that. There's got to be some good things. I mean, let's talk about the Khmer Rouge and how there was roads where there was no roads before, or when the United States would drop Agent Orange or napalm, that did clear some pathways for certain different animals that may not have been able to get through regions of that part of the, I mean, it's a weird fucked up thing to do. So it's very unusual that they're still trying to push this in this day and age.
Here's a nugget you can say that when I say it in Parliament, it silences the liberals like you wouldn't believe. You know who opened more residential schools than Egerton Ryerson? Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He opened 4 of them, maybe 5, and Chrétien opened 3 of them. Who closed that program? Mulroney. Who apologized for it? Harper. So conservative?
Hey, everyone, you're going to say that the Nazis were a bad thing, all right? You're going to say that the whole Nazi project was a bad idea. You know who was German around that time? Albert Einstein. That's right. That's right. You know who else was? Karl Marx. And that shuts them up. That shuts up the liberals quite a bit, or the lefties, all the radical left. They'll stop talking when they hear those two little nuggets. That's what I like to call them, nuggets. Yeah, just throw those nuggets at your lefty friends.
When it comes to residential schools in the modern era, have a better record than the liberals. That shocks the hell out of the woke crowd, I'll tell you. But I can send you, how all of the schools were listed in the Truth and Reconciliation report, a report asked for by Stephen Harper. So let's learn from the bad mistakes and in some case tragic circumstances of our past. But when Egerton Ryerson was called in by Hector Langevin and people, it was meant to try and provide education. It became a horrible program that really harmed people. We have to learn from that. And I wear orange and I do that. But we're not helping anyone by misrepresenting the past. By the time Pierre Trudeau opened those schools, it was 100 years after we knew the program was a disaster. Where is the woke left calling for the renaming of the Trudeau Airport?
Great. O'Toole also said the campus conservative group that was pointing out conservatives have a better record on residential schools than liberals is something that shocks the hell out of the woke crowd. Conservatives, when it comes to residential schools in the modern era, have a better record than the liberals. Who closed that program? Mulroney. That's Brian Mulroney. Who apologized for it? Harper. Come on. This is how we got to look at it. by the Ministry of Indian Affairs 1847 to suggest the practices that operate within industrial schools, previously called the manual labor schools, to train indigenous children to become farm laborers. The schools simply did not teach basic skills, but were also heavily focused on morals and religion. The TRC observed that the educational framework Ryerson laid out would later plague the Canadian residential system throughout its history. Langevin, who served as Canadian's public works minister under Macdonald, helped establish residential schools. In 1883, Langevin defended the government's policy of separating indigenous children from their families, telling the House of Commons that the purpose of the program was to assimilate savage indigenous children into the supposedly civilized culture of European colonists. The fact is that if you wish to educate those children, you must separate them from their parents during the time that they are being educated. If you leave them in the family, they may know how to read and write, but they still remain savages. Whereas by separating them in this way proposed, they acquire the habits and tastes, it is hoped only the good tastes of civilized people. All right. Okay. So, I mean, you know what's kind of funny about this is this is the same thing that the right is doing in America. I guess in Australia and New Zealand, everywhere. This idea that we have to beat them on their playing field. And in these liberal college campuses, these liberal hive minds where they just churn out leftists, you know, they come in one end being like, I love capitalism, come out the other end and being like, oh, Marx and Engels are based. We have to stop that at its source. And the only way to stop that, of course, is to cut them right at the root. So when they're like, hey, by the way, residential schools are super fucked up and we should probably stop teaching kids that there's any benefit to them, we can say, well, you know what? You know who opened up for? Pierre Trudeau, Justin's daddy. That's right. So, checkmate. Checkmate, lefties. What do you have to say about that? I would have to say that I don't like Justin Trudeau and fuck him and fuck his dad, and that seems par for the course. But hey, that's just one man. His dad was the prime minister. His dad was once the most famous prime minister of Canada, but not anymore. Not anymore, because now someone else has ascended the throne. That's right.
What lies around the corner? Never knowing who's going to kill you. Are you the next one to be murked? You never know if it's a friend or a foe. If you want to see the biggest names in BreadTube and Left Twitch and Butterthing and I don't know the fucking names anymore, come see Left Among Us.
If you want us to advertise your channel or work, please go to weareserfs.com and email us a 20 to 30 second ad, and we'll take it on to the end of one of our videos to help promote your leftist channel or progressive something. Whatever you do.
To our God, I'm Rast, Xander Corvus, and Schlatsky, we shall commit blood sacrifices in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, our lives are yours to command. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Stephen, Hans Josephine, Poppy Nelson, Ryan Lubin, Jimothy K. Meeblebeeps Jr., we bow meekly for your pleasure. To our knights of the round table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Bythe, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Political Puppy, Jimmy Bignuts, Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Yopi, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Jack Darko, Thomas Barretton, J. Fraser Cartwright, Goofalankius, Melissa Murphy, Nicholas Marks, Alexander Thaler, Ali Rada Jaffer, Alex Gauvin, Radical Maniac, we salute you.